We're trying out new technology. Okay, so now we'll continue with the Gita, chapter 9. And the last time we did 1 through 5. This is a chapter on Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya, Yogo Nama, Navamodhyaya. The 9th chapter called the Yoga of the Kingly Knowledge and Kingly Secret. And as I explained last time, it's not secret because someone kept it a secret. It's secret because it's hidden in plain sight. No one pays attention to it. Nobody is interested. And so it remains a secret. So let's go back to verse 4 and 5 to enter into the new text tonight. And so 4 and 5, which we did last time, 4 says, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyaktamurtina matsthani sarva bhutani nachaham teshvavasthitaha. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagad avyaktamurtina. So idam sarvam jagat, this whole universe. Maya tatam is pervaded by me. Avyaktamurtina, in my unmanifest form. So this whole vast universe is pervaded by me in my unmanifest form. Meaning it's not pervaded by the form of Sri Krishna that's standing there before Arjuna, which would have been a contradiction, an obvious contradiction. It's pervaded by his unmanifest form. The blue form of Sri Krishna standing there before Arjuna, that's his manifest form, as an avatar, as an incarnation. But it is his unmanifest form that pervades this entire universe. Matstani sarva bhutani. All beings are established in me. This whole universe and all the beings within it, they are established in me. All beings dwell within my being. Nachaham teshvavastitaha, but I am not established in them. I don't exist within them. So that's a strange statement because we know that the idea of the Hindu idea is that God dwells within all beings, and Sri Krishna says that in other places. And yet here he says, I am not established in them. So what does that mean? As I explained last time, it means that God has not become all beings, though even that statement you find in the scriptures, that I have become, and you find it in the Gita, that I have become all beings. But no, what does that mean, that I have become all beings? It doesn't mean that God has become a rock, that God has become a paperweight, God has become a table. No, God has not become all beings. God is appearing as all beings. That this is nothing but God. But it doesn't mean that God is a paperweight. It means that the paperweight is God. That sounds like the same thing, but it's not the same thing. It means that if I look into the depths of this with a mind refined by deep meditation, I'll see that the paperweightness disappears and this divine luminous being, all conscious, all knowing, all love, infinite existence appears in place of the paperweight. I was misreading that as a paperweight. And so with everything. So to say that I am not existing in all beings means that I haven't changed my nature. I haven't become a rock. I'm still the divine being. So he just said in the first half of the verse that I pervade everything. And here he's saying that I don't exist in anything. Meaning, again, that his transcendent being is not compromised by anything in this universe. He hasn't become anything other than what he is, what it is beyond gender. In the Abrahamic traditions, especially in, well, I can say especially, it may be equally of Islam too, but I know of Judaism and Christianity more intimately, that they were always afraid of what is called pantheism. That is, pantheism says that God has become all of this. And they were afraid of it because that seemed to compromise the divine being. If God has become all of this, then God is no longer God. God has become a rock. God has become become a tree, God has become a human being, a dog, a cat, a rat. And then what has happened to the transcendental nature of God if God has become all of this? So they were always afraid philosophically and theologically and religiously of pantheism. This idea that God, the compromising of God by identifying God with creation. So they maintain that the creator is entirely separate from the creation. Vedanta has a completely different way of preserving the divine nature of the divine being. That yes, on the one hand, Vedanta says that God has become all living beings. God has manifested this whole universe, but without losing its transcendent nature. So this universe is a misreading of God. So again, yes, God is the paperweight, or the paperweight is God, but not as a paperweight. It's the paperweight appearance of the paperweight. If I go beyond the appearance, I see there's nothing but the luminous divine being who has never lost its nature. My seeing it as a dull, dead, hard material object is my mistake. It's not that God has become dull, dead, inert matter. No, God is God. But I misread God as a paperweight and as all of the other things that I see. So that's what it means. But I am not at all contained in them. All created things exist in me, but I am not at all contained in them. And then the next verse contradicts even what he said in this verse. Nacha matstani bhutani pasya me yogamaishwaram bhuta brinnacha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. Nacha matstani bhutani, nor do all beings exist in me. He just said that the whole universe and all beings exist in me. And now he's saying that no, actually they don't exist in me. What does that mean? That means that if you attain to the divine being, you don't see rocks and trees and plants and animals running around and other things happening, insects crawling around in God and all of that. No, you see that God is God. The divine being is just the divine being. So on the one hand, yes, the whole universe is established in God because there's nothing but God. And so all of this is established in God, and yet it's not in God. So it's, as I said last time, there are different, I think there are 5 or 6, I think there's 6 scholars have determined there are 6 different types of religious language, and I don't remember all of the 6. I've known them but don't remember them now. But one type of religious language is the language of paradox. That I exist in all beings and yet I don't exist in all beings. All beings exist in me and yet nothing exists within me. So both are true. And it's only if we understand both that we understand the truth. It's a paradox. The nature of a paradox is that both sides, it's a contradiction, but both sides of the contradiction are true. Otherwise it's just a contradiction. If you say that the paper of this book is white and the paper of this book is black, well, no, that's a contradiction. It's not true. The ink is black, but the paper is white. And so it's not a paradox. It's just a contradiction, and it's untrue. But a paradox is where it seems to be a contradiction, but it's not a contradiction. Both sides of the paradox are true. So this whole creation is pervaded by me in my unmanifest form. All created things exist in me, but I am not at all contained in them, nor do the created things dwell in me. Behold my divine yoga. Pashya me yoga maishwaram. So see my divine yoga maishwaram. Bhuta brinna cha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. I am the sustainer and originator of the created beings. Bhuta bhavanaha. So I am the sustainer and the originator of the created things. But myself is not contained in the created things. Mamatma na bhutasto. My self is not contained in created things. So I'm the sustainer, the originator of everything, and yet I am not contained within. Here, by contained within, means that I am not limited by the things that I have created and which I sustain. So when Sri Krishna or the scriptures, other scriptures say that divinity dwells within all things, it means dwelling with it, that the divine being is the support of everything, is everywhere present. It's the reality behind everything. But when it says here that I'm not contained within beings, it means that I'm not limited by those beings. So it's not that I have become a rock, it's that the rock is just an appearance. I have never lost my real nature. I have never become material creation. Material creation is an appearance of me. And so if you look into material creation, you peer through it with the mind refined through meditation, you begin to see the veil of materiality disappearing and the luminosity of the divine being shining through. Swami Ashokananda, one of our great Swamis, who was head of the San Francisco Center for several decades, he passed away in 1969, December 69. He said that when he was a young man, before he joined the order, but he was already, since he was a young teenager, he had been familiar with the teachings and had studied Swami Vivekananda in particular and Sri Ramakrishna. So he was already moving towards becoming a monk, but had not yet. He was living in East Bengal, Bangladesh, and was doing service work in a village there, serving the poor. And he used to sit for meditation in this little cabin that he lived in this village. And he used to do the practice of thinking, now everything in this universe is just an appearance of the reality. There's the name and form of all of these objects. This table has the name table, and it has the form, the shape, the color, and all of that. But behind this, there's the reality itself. So he would try to peer through the name and the form of different things that he saw. Whenever he would see something, he would say, okay, here's the name and form, but the reality behind it is the divine being, is Brahman itself, is the Atman. So he would try to see, why can't I see through the name and form? So that went on for some time as a practice. And then he said one day, after he had done his worship, the simple puja that he did in his cabin, a cat came into the room, and he looked at the cat, and suddenly he saw this divine light coming out of the face of the cat. Suddenly the form of the cat disappeared and this divine light appeared. And so then he realized, or then he saw, that the practice he had been doing had borne fruit, that he saw through the name and the form, and this divine being shone through. So now we come to verse 6, which says, Yathakasha sthito nityam vayu sarvatra go mohan Tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani tyupadharaya. So yatha kasha stito nityam vayu sarvatra go mohan. So just as yatha, the wind, the great wind goes everywhere, which goes everywhere. Akasha sito nityam. Just as the wind is established in space. There's the space and the wind blowing through space. And it goes everywhere. Tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani tyupadharya. Understand that in the same way, all beings abide within me. So in the great, in the space, in the sky, in the space, the wind goes everywhere, but space is unaffected by it. And yet it's within space that the wind moves. So within me, all beings move, live, and have their being. Understand that just as the luminous wind moving everywhere is ever present in space, similarly all the created things abide in me. course, we also have to understand, because of other things that he has said in the Gita, that it's not just that we live and move in God but have nothing to do with God. No, it's also true that everything that is living is moving, and everything that's stationary as well. All is just an appearance of that one divine being. So these forms move about within that divine being, but those are just appearances of the divine being itself. That everything here is nothing but the divine being. I just finished a retreat with Swami Sarvapriyananda. We gave a retreat in Dallas this weekend. All day Saturday, all day Sunday. And so Swami Sarvapriyananda is very fond of the analogy, it's a very good analogy, of the clay and the pot. And he was teaching from the Aparokshanubhuti, the text called Aparokshanubhuti, and I was teaching from the Advaita Makaranda. But in the example of the clay and the pot, if you have clay and you make it into a pot, what is the pot? It's just clay, nothing but clay. Wherever you touch the pot, you're touching nothing but clay. So does the pot have any existence apart from clay? No, it doesn't. It has no existence whatsoever apart from clay. Does the clay have an existence apart from the pot? Yes. The clay is not dependent on the pot, but the pot is completely dependent upon clay. Without clay, the pot has absolutely no existence. And there's nothing, if you have a pot made of clay and say you haven't fired the clay, it can still be moistened and softened. And then you change the shape of the pot, you just make it back into a ball. The pot is gone. Where is the pot? Where is the bowl that you had? That was just an appearance of clay. It was nothing but clay all of the time. But the form that we call bowl is just a practical function. It has no existence outside of the clay and outside of its usefulness. There's nothing that when you take the bowl and mash it back into a ball, there's not the bowlness which is dropped somewhere and you can pick it up and say, well, here's the bowl, but now the clay has run out of it. Or to take the analogy I prefer for this, the wave on the ocean. The wave is nothing but water. And yet you say that's a wave there. When the wave subsides, then water is left, but you go over and you don't find a cellophane bag that's left and say that, well, this is the wave, but all the water drained out of it. No, it was nothing but water taking a particular form. And so this whole universe is like that. Everything is like forms of the divine being. Manifestations of the divine being. The divine being is not at all dependent on the forms, but the forms are completely dependent on the divine being. And so that again is why Sri Krishna said in the first two verses or the fifth verse that we read, the second verse we read, that I am not contained within all beings, because just as the clay is not contained by the pot, that is, the pot has no control over the clay. The clay stands on its own. The pot doesn't stand on its own. And so everything here doesn't stand on its own. It's just an appearance of that divine being. Everything here has existence. It appears to have existence. We say the chair is, the house is, people are seated here, I'm seated here, this is here, that is there. The sense of existence, that's shared by everything that is. It has the quality of existing, the quality of being, the quality of isness. But that isness is the divine being itself. When we have the sense that something is, or that I am, that itself is a direct intuition of the divine being, because existence is nothing but divine existence. There's no existence but divine existence. So when we have a sense that this is, that's a direct intuition of Brahman, because Brahman alone is. So understand that just as the voluminous wind moving everywhere is ever present in space, similarly all created things abide in me. So in that sense, yes, everything abides within him. But just as space is not affected by the wind blowing through it, the wind, no matter how strong the wind is, you can have a hurricane or tornado force winds. They can destroy houses, destroy buildings, destroy trees and plants, destroy everything in its path. But space isn't affected. You can't destroy space. And so we live and move and have our being in the divine being, but we don't affect it at all. It remains the same. So that verse we say at the end of this class, and a verse which many of you have heard all your life, that Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. So that infinite being is full. This is full. From out of that fullness, this fullness has come. And yet when this fullness returns to that fullness, there's nothing but full, or actually that's one translation. The translation I usually use is, this universe, the fullness of this universe has come out of that fullness, and yet that fullness remains ever the same. It's unaffected by the very process of so-called creation, which is not creation, it's manifestation. It's manifestation. So then verse 7 says, Sarva bhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpadau visrujamyaham. So here he says that kalpakshaye, at the end of a kalpa, that is a long eon or eons of existence, when the day of Brahma has come to an end and it's time for him to go to sleep. That is when creation has existed for billions of years, and now it's time for Brahma to take a nap, get a good night's sleep on a night of Brahma. Then Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam. At that time, O Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, at that time, Sarva Bhutani, all beings, Mamikam Prakritim Yanti, return to my Prakriti. So everything here returns back to the seed state. So this universe comes out of the seed state, and then at the end of a long age of time, billions of years, then it returns back into the seed state. Punastani kalpado visarjam yaham. So then again, again, kalpado, at the beginning of another age. Tani visarjam yaham. I project them forth. So at the beginning of a new age, then I project them out again. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say in his metaphor, he would say that just as an elderly woman in the village, she keeps a little hodgepodge pot, as they call it in the English translation, where she keeps the seeds of plants and other little things, needles and little things that she might need. Nowadays, people have so many things that we don't have that sort of idea. We have drawers and desks full of things, and storage full of things, and closets, and so many things. But I still remember even me in this country when I was a little kid, going into the country to visit relatives and things, and there would be, and even both men and women, both men would have a little container where they'd keep nails and screws and bolts and all of those things, and women would have a bowl in which they'd have all the little things that they may need on a daily basis, needles and pins and paper clips and seeds and other things. So Sri Ramakrishna say that the Divine Mother keeps everything in her hodgepodge pot. And at the end of the kalpa, so all of the seeds of creation she keeps, and then when it's time for creation again, then she brings them out and makes the new creation out of those things which she has saved from the previous creation. So everything here goes into a seed state. And just as the tiny seed of a banyan tree, The banyan tree is such a huge tree. One banyan tree can become a whole forest. Not, as you know, not by making new banyan trees, but the one tree. Grow in a huge tree and then sending down aerial roots which become new trunks, and it spreads out further, the same tree. And then further limbs going out, and then new aerial roots going down and spreading further and further. In the Calcutta Botanical Garden, I've never been to it. I've always wanted to go, but somehow I've never gotten there. There's one banyan tree which is many acres big, all one tree. And so it comes from a tiny little seed, like a fig seed, because it is a fig tree, a type of fig tree, the ficus, not the edible fig tree, but it is a ficus, a fig. And so a tiny little fig seed, out of that this huge thing comes. And so all of this is resolved down into a seed state. And then once again, out of that, this universe is manifested. So, O son of Kunti, all the created things go back at the end of a cycle to my prakriti, that is, to my nature, the seed state of nature. I project them forth again at the beginning of a cycle. So the word prakriti, that of course means nature. Then nature, in the Hindu use of the term nature, doesn't mean what we in English when we talk about nature. In English, when we talk about nature, we mean everything except for the things made by human beings. Nature means what's untouched by human beings, or what at least is not much touched by human beings, and everything else is man-made, human-made. But prakriti means everything that is perceivable, everything that is objectifiable, anything that can be perceived at any level of creation. All material things, including this body, is part of nature. But the mind is part of nature as well, because that also can be perceived. We can see our own minds, we can see our thoughts. Those two are material, of a higher order of matter, a subtler state of matter, but we can see our thoughts. So those also are part of Prakriti. All of the worlds, this world and even up to the world of Brahma, the creator, that also is part of Prakriti. Brahma himself, the Chaturmukhi Brahma, the creator, the deity Brahma, he himself is part of nature, Prakriti. So Prakriti is everything other than pure consciousness. And so going back, so all of that is Prakriti, but here he's talking about Prakriti in its seed state. So in Sankhya philosophy and yoga philosophy, they talk about the 24 cosmic principles. You start with Prakriti, and then it comes down to the Mahat, etc., until you get down to material creation. And so all of that goes back to Prakriti, the seed state. So Prakriti can mean the seed state of nature, or it can mean everything that's manifested. But here he's talking about the seed state of nature. So, son of Kunti, all created things go back at the end of a cycle to my Prakriti. I project them forth again at the beginning of a cycle. And then 8 says, Prakritim swam avashtabhya visrjami punah punaha bhutagrama mimam kritsnam avasham prakritir vashat. So Prakritim swam, Prakritim avashtabhya punah punaha visrjami. So keeping my own bhutagrama mimam krishnam visrajami. So keeping my own Prakriti under control, Prakritim swam avashtabhya, keeping my own Prakriti under control, I project forth again and again the whole of this multitude of created things. Punaha visarjami. What do I again and again project? Bhutagrama mimam krishnam. This whole, all of these created beings. So keeping my own Prakriti under control, I project forth again and again the whole of this multitude of created things. Avasham prakritir vashat, which are helpless under the influence of Prakriti. So I project this whole universe because we've asked him to, because we say, oh God, we're ready to be created, so now get on with it. No, it's under the will of the divine being. Under my own, with your help, I send forth all created things which are helpless under the influence of Prakriti. That is, helpless here means that it happens whether we want it to happen or not. And why does it happen whether we want it to or not? Not because God is cruel, but because it happens according to karma. We haven't yet finished our karma, and so at the end of a kalpa, the end of an age, those who have not finished their karma, those who have not attained to liberation, then they go back as part of the seed state for the next creation. And then according to their karma, they are projected forth. So there's an idea in New Age thought, Western New Age thought, that that before we're born, we choose our parents and we choose the circumstances of our birth. It's a very nice thought to think that I've got a choice, and so I make a choice. I decide, okay, I'm going to be born, and I'm going to be born here. This is where I'm going to be born. But no, that's not the way it happens. We don't. Somebody doesn't come and ask us, well, would you like to be born now? Where would you like? It's like go to a vast shopping mall with all kinds of opportunities of places to be born. Which country would you like? And what kind of parents do you like? And what kind of circumstances? Do you want to be poor this time, or do you want to be rich this time? And no, it's not like that. We're born under the force of the causes which we ourselves have already set in motion. We're born according to the circumstances of our karma. And so in that sense, we are sent forth helplessly. Helplessly, not because God is cruel, because God is a tyrant. It's because we ourselves have set in motion the karmic processes which result in our being born in the circumstances we're in. So one of the reasons why New Age thinkers say that you choose the place where you're born is because the good thing behind that idea is that it means that wherever I'm born, if I chose it, then I have to find out why I chose it and find the value in it. But again, that's not what happens. But the same idea, the same benefit comes from understanding the law of karma, that if I myself set in motion the causes which have brought about the effect of the circumstances of this life, the circumstances of my birth, with all of the good and the bad things that have come with my birth in particular circumstances, then to understand that, I brought this about. And so there's something here that I needed to experience because of my past. And so not to be resentful for the circumstances of my birth, but to realize that no, I myself brought myself here. The good and the bad. If the circumstances of my birth are painful, then let me accept them. And let me accept the circumstances I was born in. If I'm unfortunate to be born in a family where it's not a loving family and I have serious conflicts with parents and very bad role models of the parents that I have, then if I can come to the understanding that no, it was my own actions which led me to be born here. For some reason, I needed to have this experience. So let me accept the experience, not to say that it was good, not to say if my parents were bad parents, not to say that my parents were good when they weren't good, but to realize that no, it's not their fault. I brought myself here. And so to take responsibility for the circumstances I have. So if I'm lucky and my parents are good and everything, then yes, that was, blessed are the causes that set in motion the circumstances of my birth. And if they weren't good, if they weren't ideal, then that also, yes, let me learn from it. Let me learn from that. Let me now try to do better so that if in this life I can go beyond karma and attain to realization, well and good. But if I don't, let me at least set in motion the causes for an auspicious birth in my next life. Let me be careful with the way that I behave now, so that in my next life, if I have a next life, if I have to come back, that I'll come back in circumstances which are propitious. Not ideally, not wishing to come back as a child of Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or somebody like that because I want to be rich. Yes, if you want to, eventually you will become rich, but then you'll find out, oh, that was a big mistake. That was a big mistake. So, not to come back in what I think is a pleasant nest to come back to. No, come back in circumstances which will help me forward to a state of illumination. So, then we come to verse 9. Nacha mam thani karmani nibaddhanti dhananjaya udasina vadasinam asaktam teshu karmasu. Nacha mam thani karmani nibaddhanti dhananjaya. So Dhananjaya, O Arjuna, those actions do not bind me, to be sure. Namam thani karmani nibaddhanti. Udasina vadasinam asaktam teshu karmasu. Remaining like one unconcerned with and unattached to those actions. So those actions of the actions of living beings, and also the action of creation, that doesn't bind me. I'm not bound by any action. What is it that why is it that action binds us? Why is it that karma meaning action, not the law of karma right now, but karma meaning action, why is it that action binds us? It's because of the sense of being a doer, that I do this and this action is mine. If I have the sense of agentship, that I am doing this action, then the result will be mine also. It will come back to me. But God has no sense of agentship. That's why in some of the verses, like one of the verses in chapter 4, Sri Krishna says that I have created the 4 divisions of humanity, the 4 castes, but I'm not but I haven't done anything. I haven't really created them. That I'm the karta, I'm the maker of the divisions among people, but I'm not the creator of the divisions. So that is that everything proceeds out of the divine being, but there's no sense of being a karta, that I am the creator. So again, when we think about creation from the Hindu standpoint, we have to remember that creation doesn't mean that God sits around making things and making decisions. And no, God doesn't make any decisions. God doesn't make anything. God doesn't do anything. Things happen in the light and power of God. They take place, but there's no sense of, I'm going to do this. So people are always asking, well, why does God do this and why does God do that? Well, there's no answer to that, because God doesn't do anything. And yet, God does everything. But God does everything, but not in the sense that God, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make this person scratch his head, and I'm going to make that person lean over this way, and I'm going to make that person nod yes, and another person, I'm going to make that person look confused. And no, God would go crazy if God were directing every single thing. Everything happens by the will of God, but God does nothing. So don't think, well, why does God make so many people miserable? Why does God create so much suffering in the world? Oh, no, God does nothing. It's in the presence and in the consciousness and in the power of God that everything happens. But it's not God sitting there flipping switches and turning dials and making people do things. No, it's not like that. That's how karma, everything that we see happens according to causation. But we're caught within that causation, and we are participating within that causation. And freedom comes by realizing that, no, I don't really do anything. That just as God doesn't do anything, but everything happens by the will of God, but not in that sense of making a sankalpa, what's the English word for sankalpa? A decision. Determination, yeah, something like that. Not sankalpa can be oath, but it doesn't mean oath here. It means to make a. What was that? Yeah, it must be determination. Yes, there's another word I'm trying to think of, but a decision. Yes, yeah, decision. Yeah, I knew it was a simple word. So decision is easier than determination, but I couldn't come to decision. So it's not that God is making decisions that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Ramana Maharshi, the great South Indian sage, he said that the difference between a realized soul, a perfected soul, and an ordinary person is that the perfected soul, the free soul, makes no sankalpa, makes no decisions. That I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. None of that arises. Just he sees that things happen, but that makes no decisions whatsoever. So karma happens because we take responsibility for the actions. And so as long as we have a sense of doing things, then we have to take responsibility. So again, it doesn't mean, as the many stories to illustrate that, like Sri Ramakrishna's story about the man who killed the cow and then blamed it on Indra, the deity who governs the hand, and said, I didn't do it, Indra did it. So no, there are many stories to show that if we do action with a sense of being the agent, we have to take responsibility for the results. Why? Because karma itself makes us. The results are going to come to us. We can't escape them. We can run as far as we want, but karma will find us. And the results of the actions we have done will come back to us. But once I realize I do nothing and I see things just happening, then I've broken the chain of karma. Then there's no more karma for me. Then I'm free. So what's the difference between someone just wrote me an email, someone who came from Texarkana to the retreat in Dallas. He asked me about the difference between realization and enlightenment. And somebody also in the retreat, maybe it was the same person, gave a written question about the difference between realization and liberation, or enlightenment and liberation. So liberation means liberation from the bondage of samsara, of relative existence. And that simply means that I'm no more bound to the process of karma and to the necessity for rebirth. I've gone beyond the bondage of karma. Because I no longer have the sense of being the doer. Either I have surrendered doership to God, that God is the doer, and I am the child of God, and I've surrendered myself to God, I've surrendered myself to the Divine Mother. I do nothing, she does everything. Sokolito Maricha, everything is your will, O Divine Mother. Ichamoy ma Tara Tumi, O you who are Tara, the one who carries us across the ocean of samsara. You are Ichamoy, you are the willful one. You do all, and yet we say, I do such and such. But actually you do everything. So from a devotional standpoint, you do everything, O Lord. You do everything, O Divine Mother. I do nothing. And if that becomes a matter of experience, then I'm free, I'm liberated. Whatever my level of experience, whether I've attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi or anything else, there's no need for further rebirth. But enlightenment means, is speaking of the content of experience, that is the knowing the highest truth. And so liberation can come even before the highest enlightenment. Liberation comes from experience, but the experience we need for liberation is to know that I don't do anything, that I do nothing, and to know that experientially, that I do nothing. Whether I attain that devotionally or whether I attain it through the state of knowledge, it doesn't matter. Whereas enlightenment is speaking of the direct experience that I have, whether it's the direct experience of God, Ishvara, Prabhu, or whether it's the knowledge that I am one with Brahman, that I am Brahman, that I am the infinite being. So, So, Dhananjaya, nor do those actions bind me, to be sure, remaining as I do like one unconcerned with and unattached to those actions. like creation and the dissolution of the universe. So I'm not touched by the actions of others, but I'm not attached by the actions of myself. That is, I project to the whole universe. I prakritim swam avashtabhya, having taken control of my own prakriti. I project to the whole universe, but I don't do anything. I don't do anything. I project to the whole universe, having taken control of my own prakriti, that is, my own nature, the cosmic nature, which is my own, meaning God's own, is my own. Taking possession of that, taking control of it, then I project forth a new creation. But I don't do anything. I don't do anything. From a conventional sense, yes, it's God who creates everything. But in reality, God does nothing. It just happens. There's no sense of doership. And so God is not affected by creation and destruction. God is not affected by the results of creation and destruction. God is not affected by the actions of the created beings also. So just as it says in the Christian Bible that God makes his sun to shine on the just and on the unjust, makes his rain to pour on the good and the bad. So God brings forth all beings, good and bad, but is untouched by any of that. So, O Dhananjaya, nor do those actions bind me, to be sure, remaining as I do, like one unconcerned with and unattached to those actions. So let's see, we'll take one more verse and then I'll see if there are any questions. Do number 10. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. So under me, who am the supervisor, Maya Adhyakshena, under me, who am the supervisor, Prakriti produces all the moving and the non-moving things. Suyate sachara, Prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Prakriti produces all the moving and non-moving things. Owing to this reason, hetuna nena, O son of Kundi, the universe changes diversely. So Jagad Viparivartate, changes diversely. So under me, who am the supervisor, Prakriti produces all the moving and the non-moving things. Owing to this reason, O son of Kunti, the universe changes diversely. So it's through Prakriti that all of the things of nature, this whole universe, undergoes its changes. So the difference between Vedanta and Sankhya and Yoga philosophy, those two are on one side and Vedanta on another side. Vedanta accepts most of the cosmology of Sankhya philosophy. But it differs in several points, and the main point where, not the only, but the main point where it differs from Sankhya is that Sankhya says, and Yoga also says, that there is Prakriti, that is nature, and there's Purusha. Purusha is pure consciousness, and Prakriti is everything that is seen by consciousness, everything that is objective. But Sankhya says that the two are eternally separate. It's the apparent connection of the two which creates bondage. The Purusha has forgotten that he's the Purusha. The consciousness has forgotten that it's pure consciousness and has identified with nature, has identified with the objective. And so according to Sankhya, the goal is to know that I am completely separate from Prakriti, that I'm separate from this body, separate from this mind. I am consciousness alone. But Vedanta differs from that by saying that Prakriti is not a separate category. Prakriti is just an appearance within consciousness. That Prakriti is completely dependent upon consciousness. It's nothing but an appearance of consciousness, just like the bowl and the clay. The bowl has no separate existence. The bowl is just an appearance of clay. Once you know that this is clay, then you know that the bowl is nothing but clay. Or ornaments made of gold. You take the gold and shape it into an ornament. The ornament is completely dependent upon the gold. Outside of the gold, the ornament has no existence. But the gold is swata siddha. It's independently existent. It exists by itself. The gold is not dependent on anything. The ornament depends completely on it. The bowl, the clay elephant, the clay mouse, all of that is completely dependent on the clay. But the clay doesn't depend on the bowl or the clay mouse or the clay elephant. And so the Vedanta says that Prakriti is nothing but an appearance within consciousness itself. It's just like consciousness taking on waves of appearance. And so, again, here, the universe changes diversely. Under me, the supervisor, Prakriti produces the universe with all the moving and non-moving things. So here he's speaking from the standpoint of Sankhya, but it has to be understood that he's speaking only provisionally from the standpoint of Sankhya, because, of course, he is the author of Vedanta itself. So, yes, this whole universe is just a play of Prakriti, but that Prakriti belongs to who? It belongs to God. It's just the play of God and just the appearance of God. It's not something separate. So from a conventional standpoint, there's God and God's Prakriti. And so Sri Krishna teaches oftentimes from, as the scriptures do, from a conventional standpoint, that I take control of my Prakriti as if Prakriti is out here and God is here. God takes control of it. He grabs his Prakriti and then he projects the universe forth. But no, the Prakriti is not something that's separate from God. It's out of the very being of God. This universe is imagined into being. It's just an appearance of nothing but Prakriti, as the bowl is nothing but an appearance of clay. And so all the moving and non-moving things, owing to this reason, O son of Kunti, the universe changes diversely. And so from the standpoint of the jnani, the follower of the path of knowledge, they see that everything happens according to the changes of Prakriti. The follower of the path of knowledge is usually not interested in God and a relationship with God. They're interested in Brahman, the absolute. But when they see the universe, they're not thinking that, oh, this is all the play of God. You can do that as a jnani, but say one who follows the pure path of jnana without mixing devotion into it. Then for them, this universe is just the play of Prakriti. And so they don't think, let me surrender to God. Said, I am consciousness itself. Let the changes of Prakriti go on. That's just the play of Prakriti. So it's said they see it as just an unconscious process. So let's stop here for today and see if there are any questions before we close. Any question from? Yes, Jayanta up here in the front. Jitenji. Here. Now it's working. Okay. Yeah, okay. It's working.
New tool, okay. More is confusion with Prakriti here. And in chapter 4, verse number 6, the second line, it says that Prakritim samadhishta sambhava atma maya.
Yes.
That the Prakriti is the power, right? Or force.
Yes. So there he's saying basically the same thing in chapter 4. He's saying that I take my own Prakriti and body myself forth. Here he's talking about the incarnation. In chapter 4, he's talking about the incarnation. That taking control of my Prakriti, I body myself forth. That is, I manifest myself as the incarnation of God. So when God incarnates in human form, God takes control of his own Prakriti, that is his own power, his Maya Shakti. And out of that Maya Shakti takes birth in human form. And so here he's talking about the same thing, but from the standpoint of the creation of the whole universe. So it's the same Maya Shakti, which is Prakriti, So here he's using the term Prakriti, but Prakriti is the same as Maya Shakti, the power of the divine, the power of Maya, the power of appearance. So one is to take birth in human form, because how else can the infinite divine being take form as a human being, as a limited human being? It's only by the power of Maya Shakti. We're born out of delusion, out of the force of karma. We're forced to be born because we have set causes in motion through karma that have to be experienced. And so we have to take birth in certain circumstances that were determined by our past karma. But God is free, absolutely free. So it's by taking hold of that Maya Shakti that takes birth in human form out of freedom, not out of force. And so also at the cosmic scale is taking control of that Maya Shakti and projecting this universe forth. But again, even that is from our conventional standpoint, that as far as God is concerned, nothing happens. It just there's no sense of kartritva, agentship.
Okay, but in the Prakriti, you will have this Sattva Rajatama as a composition, or
Yes, that's said to be the very nature of Prakriti. But that, whether you call it Maya Shakti or Prakriti, it's the same thing. It's made of the three gunas. Yes, yes. So the three gunas are the constituents of Prakriti, the constituents of nature. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas.
Okay, here he is telling that controlling this Prakriti.
Yes,
I control
it.
everything.
Yes.
There it is telling that like taking an avalamban, like taking help from Prakriti,
Taking help,
right?
yeah. But it means the same thing.
Same thing?
It means the
Okay.
same thing, yes, yes, yes. It's the same thing. So he's taking control of Prakriti in order to project the universe. It's through Prakriti, through Maya Shakti, that this universe comes into being. And it's through that Maya Shakti that the God incarnates in human form. So same thing, just speaking of incarnation or the creation of the whole universe. Two different functions of the same Shakti. Okay, any other question? Okay, so let me give a closing chant and Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. That infinite being is full, perfect, and complete. This relative universe is full, perfect, and complete. From out of the fullness of that infinite being, the fullness of this universe has come. And yet that being remains ever the same. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe. So for announcements, we'll have